I'm going to talk about renewable energy. It's an extremely broad subject, so I'm going to try and take you through a little journey from a broad perspective and down to Bergen and BKK. Let's see if this works. When you talk about renewable energy, of course, you talk about it in the sense that we in the future are going to need a lot more energy. But you also associate it with the climate change problem. IPCC has been very clear about the fact that we are in trouble and that we probably, or maybe not, are going to be able to reach the goal of only increasing the temperature with 2 degrees. And as Jørgen said, that some companies are usually, take the strategy up to once a year, look at if the environment has changed, maybe once or twice a year. It seems to the rest of the world that the climate is on the agenda once a year, on the COP meetings that are held every December, and the last one was held in Doha. And it is obvious every year that there is a big problem on agreeing for the whole world. Some are trying to do something about it in regions, national settings, and Norway then is associated with the EU type of approach. Jørgen also showed us a graph from the World Energy Outlook that came in December, the International Energy Agency's yearly outlook for the energy in the future. If you see on this graph here, you have by 2035, all the regions of OECD, non-OECD, and the total of the world will have much more renewable energy by 2035 than it has in 2010. It's associated here with the green, and that's bioenergy, hydro, wind, solar, and other renewables. And the World Energy Outlook last year was criticized for having underestimated the potential of solar energy. Whereas IPCC is very clear about especially the potential that you can have in the future for solar energy. And then it's the direct use of energy from the sun. It's not like Egil said that bioenergy is also sun energy, it's just through photosynthesis. And so this is a direct use of energy from the sun they're talking about. Together with all the others, wind energy, hydro, tide, wave, oceans, and geothermal, and many others. A country that has taken this into the full is Germany, as it has been mentioned. Germany is in a very big energy transformation that they call the Energiewende, a very nice word. And it's a plan, they have a very big plan, and most of it is to shift from nuclear power and fossil fuels to renewable energy. And they are getting very good according to their plan. They're phasing out their nuclear by 2022, as Jørgen said, and Germany has like 16 Bundes regions, and they have all different plans according to what their potentials are. Some are very putting all the attention to biofuels and bioenergy. Some are, have wind. They have mostly wind in the north, and you have most of the sun in the south. So there are a lot of different plans, but the government targets is to by 2050 that 80% of the consumption from electricity should be from renewables. You have the graph here, and it says by itself that if you're taking out coal, because coal is not preferred, natural gas is preferred. So you want to have more natural gas instead of coal, and then you don't want the nuclear. You have this huge gap that you have to fill. And it is I started with the climate, and it's not just, it's probably second, the climate is that they associate with it. It's the security supply issue that's the biggest issue for Germany. And their problem is, as it has been mentioned, that this is intermittent, a lot of intermittent energy, and they need the backup. And as of today, all the backup of coal and gas, it's not profitable because all the intermittent disturbs the system. So the gas plants are losing profits, and they don't see the incentives to invest in the future. So the coal-fired plants are still working instead of closing down. So there's a lot of new issues that come up, and it's not a lot of issues that the politics have to address because things aren't working as they were planned and hopefully did. So, but Germany used this plan, the Energiewende, as a means to reduce their carbon emissions, and it's in a very ambitious plan, and it's extremely risky, and not to say extremely, extremely costly. This costs enormously amount of money. And combined with this, as it has been mentioned, you have to build other transmission lines to be able to transport it internally and externally to be able to exchange with the areas around you. Okay, if you look at Norway then, we are part of the European energy system through many ways, both through physical interconnectors and also through a market. We trade power. And we have direct lines through Denmark and Sweden and Finland, and also one to the Netherlands. So you see here it's a picture of Nordnet interconnector that came online in 2008. It works fine. It has been out of order a few times, but it works quite fine. It's the longest cable ever built so far. But in 2016, BKK will have built the longest sea cable ever, and also the deepest. We got the commission, the final commission yesterday to build this cable between Mongstad and Kolsnes, and a big part of it is through the sea. So it's a very big challenge, but we're eager to start. It's quite fun. And in the future, Statnett has promised us that we will get new interconnectors to Germany and UK. And we will need it. And I'm coming back to that later. We also have the market integration. EU is very keen on an internal market for all products, including power. So we have integration of price systems and market trade systems in the Nord Pool area, and then you go down to the continent, you have the EX and the APX, and they're getting more and more integrated. Also, it helps to have the physical flow also. So you can trade yourself in and out here. And Norway is, on the everyday basis, we feel the wind blowing and the sun shining in Germany. Yesterday it started again to shine in Germany. We had a peak hour effect again, because it's quite dark during the winter time. So, and then you can notice it on the prices momentarily. It's very interesting. And then, of course, when it's wet in Norway, you want to export it. And when it's dry in Norway, you want to import. So it has a lot of synchronized effects, but you can be a bit afraid of the whole energy system as a whole being maybe overloaded with too much intermittent at times. So we'll see. I said that we were connected through interconnectors physically and also through markets, but also we have a strong politic and law associated with it to Norway. As a lot of the energy and climate policies made in Norway are actually made in Brussels. They are adopted more or less the same way, and through our agreement with the EU. Also then the three directives on renewable energy, energy efficiency, and CO2 emission, but that you have to reduce by 2020. And in Norway we have negotiated in a huge, we have to increase our share of renewables by 6-7% by 2020. And the Norwegians have decided that the certificate market is the way of doing it, so we are forced to build 13 terawatt hours of new renewable power by 2020 to be able to get these certificates, which is an added value for the production of a new renewable, whatever it is, but you get then the price from the power, and you also get the price from a certificate that you can show for. So to combine, these two are supposed to give you the incentives of investing in projects, new renewable projects. And 13 terawatt hours is close to 10% of what we produce already today, and today Norway is more or less, or the Nordic countries are more or less in balance, which is quite nice that the demand meets the supply. So 13 terawatt hours more means one thing, and that's probably that the price is going to go down. Except that the certificate for the end user you have to pay, but the producer who produces is going to get lower price for most of the production that they have, because it's only the new renewable production that gets their certificates. So, okay. And for Norway, what is the potential there? It's a lot of big hydro has already been built out, so, and there's no government supporting being able to build more big hydropower. So it's a lot of small-scale hydropower that is put on the agenda, and also the wind power. Onshore, also some offshore, but the certificates, it's not going to cover the cost for offshore. So you would have to hold that, get the money from elsewhere to build offshore. And as you see, there's a lot of potential on the west side of Norway, both for the small scale, you see it on the left side, and then for wind power. And 2020 is not so far. And to build new production takes a long time. It takes 5 years maybe just to get the concession to be able to build. And then it takes some lead time to build and get it online. So we are quite in a hurry. So probably the projects that you're going to be able to be done by 2020 have already gotten the concessions, even if it's wind or small scale. So the question now is whether all the companies that own these concessions are taking the investment decisions. That's the big issue now. Who is going to be able to take the investments, and what will it be? Will it be wind or will it be small scale? And the certificate market we have together with Sweden, so it's a combination. It's actually 26.4 terawatt hours, but one assumes that half will be built in Norway and half in Sweden. But it doesn't have to be like that, actually. So I would consider it will be a battle by 2020 to see who will get the good projects, because hopefully it will be the cheapest and the best projects. That's the system is built that way. And as a company who already own a lot of hydro production, who wants to build, everyone wants to build. That's the fun part. And if these 13 terawatt hours are going to come online anyway, you want a piece of the cake. So, but you're afraid that it's going to be too much, that everyone now wants to build, and that you're going to deliver a lot more than these 13 terawatt hours by 2020, because then we are in trouble. Because 13 terawatt hours is already sort of in trouble. I'm coming back to that. So then we are here at the western side of Norway with all this potential. And BKK has had hydropower stations for 100 years. We have 32 power plants. In a normal year, we produce 6.8 terawatt hours. And we are, after Statkraft, to produce 35 to 40. We are a group of people or companies that produce some in this amount. It's like five, 6 companies. And then you have a lot of smaller ones. We also look at tidal, wave, ocean current, and deep geothermal, but that's just on the research base so far. It's just an early stage, and we do not involve directly in wind production. So what we are going to bring online is probably some upgrades, that we can upgrade existing power plants and then maybe make them be able to produce more, and then transferring water into existing reservoirs, because it can be quite cheap projects, and then you are able to increase or preserve your reservoir capacity, which is the good part with hydropower. It's the reservoirs. And also we probably will have some small-scale projects going on. But so we want to build in Norway, but we are also associating a bit with abroad, but that's just more financially. It's not like we go abroad to build ourselves. And it's not either on the continent, it's more on South America, Africa. We're involved in some projects there. We do have some district heating. We serve 250 large buildings in Norway, in Bergen, and 500 smaller normal households. And it's 95% renewable. It's the best district heating company in Norway. And the resource is waste from beer. And you have, at times, if it's too high a peak, you have to supply it with something else. But we have gone from oil and gas to bio. So it's quite good. It's not that much potential in district heating. What we see might be the new potential for future is cooling, so that you can serve both heating and cooling. The problem is that then you have to dig up all the roads that you have put the cables in already to put in another pipe that can cool down. So you might not be very popular if you have to dig up all the roads that you just filled. So we'll see. Biggest threat, I was told, maybe I should say something about that. I say power surplus. I'm going to start with that. As I said, that we are going to probably build ourselves into an overcapacity situation in the Nordic countries, building much more capacity than we actually need, because we don't really, by now we don't really need these 13 terawatt hours. In the future we might be, but now we are forcing this into the market instead of letting the market of demand and supply create the incentives for investments. So if we then in a normal year have, let's say 20 or 30 or 40 or even someone says 50 terawatt hours too much capacity a year, the problem is what are we going to do with it? Where are we going to use it? Are we going to increase our own demand, or are we going to be able to export it? And some, of course, we're going to be able to export, but still you lack a lot of interconnectors to be able to export all of it, or at least make it to export it in an efficient way that creates value of it, that you just don't dump it in another market because you have to get rid of it. And so it's a big issue, because this is going to affect the price, and the price is what we live of. And to say something about what the power price is going to be in 10 or 20 years, it's quite tough. And of course, this is not really our biggest threat, but it's an example of what the risks that you live in. It's a huge political risk that you, instead of, you're saying that the market is going to fix everything, but then you put in all these extra markets and instruments and overriding the market because you want something else. You want a goal, you want to fix something. And a lot of the climate goals affect the energy market. So it's actually the political risk that we are very uncertain of. They have a tendency to override, and they remove the value of the power that you produce away from the wholesale price. To the end user gets all these added up. You have to pay for the transmission, you have to pay for the taxes and for the certificate, and then the power. But the producer who needs the money if it wants to invest doesn't get all that. And it's a bit of a flaw, if you ask me. And additional to that, you have a big threat, which has also been mentioned before. It's the economic situation that we're in. The capital is not that loose anymore that it was, and if we are going to invest in all of this, then our owners is not going to get the money because they are used to taking out all this money. It's mostly regional governments that receive it, and then you feed it back to people through their schools and everything. So it's quite a nice symbiosis. But if we are going to invest in all this, we need the money. So you have to maybe have 7 years of not taking out all of this money from the company, so you're able to invest in it. And it's very highly capital-intensive investments that are going to be made. But if I'm going to put the finger on what's our biggest advantage, and now I'm speaking for BKK as a hydropower producer, of course it's clean and renewable. And if the future is renewable, that's a good thing. But our storage capacity through our water reservoirs is probably our biggest advantage. Being able to store the water and produce when you want to, preferably when the price is high. And then we can push the button. And while the wind producer and the sun producer don't have a button to push because they have to produce when the sun shines and the wind blows. So in combination, the hydropower matches the other types of renewables quite nicely, also the other thermal productions quite nicely. So what do we need? If the future is renewable and the energy systems seem to be changing and we need more energy in the future, we need people. And we need people in all sorts of forms and shapes, and we need, of course, a lot of high technical people, but we also need a more increasing amount of non-technical people to be able to create this change and the future that we are looking for. And I can just say that it's an extremely interesting line of work, and it's very satisfactory to say that you are working with something that is building a sustainable future. So, thank you for your attention.
Norway is ideally placed to combine hydroelectricity and wind, because the hydroelectricity, when the reservoirs are sort of emptying, we have a lot of wind, and vice versa. So it's really two complementary things if you see the curves of how much you could produce. And for that reason only, we should have a much more wind energy in Norway to combine with hydroelectricity, and then we could work together with the continent. As it is now, we are dependent on the fluctuations in Europe, and so we have to buy back very expensive electricity from the continent when selling out our own. But that could be very good business for BKK. But Germany, for the moment, has the most expensive electricity in Europe.
I agree a bit with the theory, but if you look at the energy system as a whole, the combination works fine then also. It's the matter of the price, but I don't think energy is too expensive. In Norway, we do have a lot of more cheap hydro to build. You should build the cheapest projects first. And you could say the same for the offshore wind. We have this huge potential along the outside of the coast also. It's extremely costly, and you should probably do the cheapest things first. So, but the costs of wind energy is decreasing constantly. Also, the sun is skydiving. It's becoming more and more economically without subsidies. So, and then that's a good thing. Subsidies is not good.
Thank you. I have one question. I mean, the last years we've seen what I mentioned in my presentation, that big data has become, and of course all these students are used to Twitter and Facebook and a lot of information all the time. As the head of analysis at BKK Production, do you find it to only be a good thing all this information, or how do you navigate in, because of course you have a lot of resources and a lot of services that you get with information, and how do you navigate in such a complex world?
It's interesting because it feels like an overload at times, and the problem is sorting out what's useful information and what's not, and combine it. And maybe a bigger problem is being certain that what we, for instance, in analysis, we see these things all the time. But do the people in
the other parts of BKK?
Parts of BKK, and then the head departments, do they see the same? Do they get the same information? Or is it just a mess for them? So being able to structure it, to take out the information that can give you knowledge and not just information. It's a tricky part, and we try now to navigate because you are bombarded with information like 10 times more now in 10 years than you used to be. It's extremely heavy load. Exactly.
It's, I'm sure a lot, anybody here writing a master's? Yes? Yeah? Because I know being a consultant that when you said about writing to the, for example, CEO, that it's almost like taking your master's and putting it into a one-pager.
And only the most important information that he needs to do the right decisions.
Exactly, and that's complex because here you're sitting with 400 pages of information or 200 and you're making one page, so that's complex.
So I just had a quick question. My name's Grant McDermott. I'm a PhD in the economics department. So it seems to me that you're being pushed into this position of building overcapacity through somewhat absurd political, machinations. But so the big constraint is the intercontinental connections, and I wonder if BKK is pushing for increased expansion that way, and whether you as a producer have taken on any of those roles in terms of, I don't know, auctioning for expansion of the grid and so on.
It has been going on work for a few years from a lot of the actors in the market, also from the producer side. And there are some producers that have seek the concession for an interconnector to the UK. Last year, the government said that interconnectors are supposed to be built by Statnett, the TSO owner in Norway. And it's our way of trying to influence is through facts, knowledge, trying to put the things together. If you say A and you want to make us build a lot more production, you have to say B and tell us what we can do with it. And then the interconnectors makes a lot of sense. Also, if this would work, we would be able to let coal fire on the continent easier shut down. So it is a climate, actually interconnectors are a bit of a climate piece. So yes, we do try to influence the governments, but not directly investing. I don't think the producers that have seek the concession will get it, and I don't think they have the money to build it.